Hey, Marshall Sparkman here. I'm a VA loan specialist. I've been specializing in VA loans and helping my fellow veterans since I got out of the military in 2008. I've just kind of made it my niche in just understanding everything there is to know about VA loans and just really becoming a true specialist in the area. So today's video, we're going to be talking about common VA eligibility requirements. Now, the VA has four main requirements that I'm going to cover. Okay, these are very basic. This is what the VA loan guidelines state, and I'm just going to kind of hit them generally, and then we're going to dive deeper into the subtopics in further videos. But this one's enough. Okay, so the four main requirements to be eligible for a VA loan, this is straight off the VA's guidelines. You have to have a valid certificate of eligibility, number one. Number two, the VA says you have to have suitable credit. So what is suitable credit? How do you define suitable credit? That's actually up for the underwriter to determine. So we'll talk more about that in the credit chapter. Number three, you must have adequate income. Now, how do you define adequate income? Well, we'll get into that in the later chapter. And number four, the property must meet minimum property requirements. Okay, so let's talk about the certificate of eligibility. That's your first requirement. Usually I tell people when you're coming to me for a VA loan, the first thing I'm going to do is while we're on the phone, I'm like typing in the computer at the VA website, pulling up your certificate of eligibility, because without a certificate of eligibility, we have no VA loan. Let me be crystal clear about that. No one can qualify you for a VA loan without first seeing your certificate of eligibility. If you get a lender that's qualified you or one of your clients without pulling their certificate of eligibility, just go ahead and run the opposite direction because they have no clue what they're doing. Okay, without the certificate of eligibility, I'll say it again, you have no VA loan. Sometimes normally I can pull it immediately off the VA's website. You can pull it also from ebenefits.gov. You log in and enter your info. Typically, you can pull it immediately. If you're not able to pull it immediately, I may be able to pull it, but if I'm not able to pull it immediately, we got to apply for it. And that process can take a week. It can take several weeks, just depending on your scenario. Most veterans can easily pull it off the VA's website. The VA has done a great job uploading everything to the eBenefits website, uploading all your military documents and that kind of stuff. However, typically I'll see the older vets, Vietnam era guys may have some issues pulling their certificate of eligibility. Like back in the 80s or 90s, there was a big fire in St. Louis, if some of y'all remember that, where a lot of military records were destroyed. If that was you and all your military records were destroyed and you have no way to find them, it can be quite a lengthy process to get everything back and get your eligibility restored. I can help you through that as well. If you have any questions on that, let me know. Nowadays, we can't even start the mortgage process without the certificate of eligibility. The VA doesn't even allow us to order the appraisal without the certificate of eligibility. It's that important, right? The certificate of eligibility is going to tell us several things. First of all, it's going to tell us if you're even eligible for the VA benefits. Second, it's going to tell us if you're exempt the funding fee or not. The funding fee is a big deal. So if you have a service-connected disability, it will say that on there, and it'll say that you're exempt the funding fee. It'll tell us the branch of service. It'll tell us if you've had prior VA loans in the past. It'll tell us how much of your eligibility you have used. It'll tell us if you've had any VA foreclosures in the past. It's a very important one-page document that we must have, okay? So what do you need to issue to prove of service to issue a certificate of eligibility if you can't get it? Well, if you're active duty, you may or may not have a certificate of eligibility. If you're fresh out of the military, you may not have a certificate of eligibility yet. If you were guard or reserve, you may not have a certificate of eligibility. We may have to go and apply for it. What you're going to need if we have to apply for it, if you're active duty, we're going to have to get a statement of active duty, which a lot of times we call it an alive and well letter from your commander. Or this can be difficult to get it sometimes. Think about it. If your commander's deployed or if he's TDY or something like that, I may not be able to get a letter from your commander or somebody. So just know going into the VA loan, if you're active duty military, I've got to get a letter. I've got to get a statement of service is what it's called before we close the loan. We got to get it going into the process. If you're a regular veteran, a copy of your DD 214, the member copy number 4. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see member copy 4. That's what we actually need to prove your service. There's copy 1, there's member copy 2. I need the member copy 4, okay? Don't ask me why. It is what it is. If you were guard or reserve, I need your NGB 22 form, okay? That's how we prove your service. Some common eligibility issues that I run across: if you have a dishonorable discharge, you're not going to be eligible for any kind of VA benefits. If you were guard or reserve and you did not serve at least 6 years, then you may not be eligible for VA benefits yet. However, if you have deployed, then more than likely you're going to be eligible for VA benefits because they count your deployment time as active duty time. So if you've been called up to active duty for any reason over 90 days, typically you're going to be eligible. But if you get some of these younger guys that just went into the guard or reserve and they haven't yet deployed, because we're not really deploying guard or reserve members like we were in the past, a lot of those guys, I run into it frequently where they're not eligible for VA benefits, so they've got to find another loan option. We've got other loan programs available that are 100%, but none of them are as good as the VA. Okay, if you've had foreclosures in the past with using your VA loan, that doesn't necessarily prevent you from being able to get a VA loan. It just may, we have to clear it up, and it may take some more time. It may affect your eligibility. I don't know. We've got to look into it. Another eligibility issue that I commonly run across: if you're an older Vietnam era guy, you don't have your medical records, you got to call the Military Record Archives. Their number is 866-272-6272. Okay, again, that's Military Record Archives, 866-272-6272. And that's about it. That's your common VA eligibility requirements. So again, certificate of eligibility, suitable credit, adequate income, and the property must meet the minimum property requirements. That's it in a nutshell. There's not a whole bunch of funky, fancy guidelines to follow. That's your pretty much basic VA eligibility requirements. So hopefully this helps you understand. If you have any other questions regarding a VA loan, I'm never too busy to take your call. Thanks.